This video contains disability history, queer rage, the legacy of protest forged into law, and a not so gentle reminder that disability rights are human rights. Hi, I'm Liv. I'm a queer disabled woman who lives in Texas, and this is Rip Up the Ending, where we use social commentary to call out the systems that fail us and reclaim the narratives that made us footnotes in our own stories. But before we get started, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment for engagement because it really helps out the channel. And while we're at it, comment below and let me know what disability pride means to you. I wrote this script on July 1st, but then I got distracted by everything going on with this disgusting budget bill, and my justice sensitivity was just on overload. And now I'm filming on July 3rd, shortly after the bill passed in the House, despite Representative Jeffries' record-breaking speech to his colleagues, and is now on its way to the orange dude's desk, where he'll sign a death warrant for millions of Americans, and as far as I'm concerned, the death warrant for America herself. Happy Disability Pride Month, everyone, am I right? Republicans cheer for 17 million Americans to lose health care as Speaker Johnson distorts the Declaration of Independence, twisting the meaning of the words endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights to proclaim our rights come from God, not the government. But it's all perversion of the truth because he doesn't mean any and every God or a creator of your own belief and understanding as the founders intended. He means their God with a capital G, their Christian nationalist God. And they will keep using that to justify restricting human rights under the guise of religion, ignoring that unalienable rights mean the government should protect our freedom, not limit it based on one single religious doctrine. It's disgusting and heartbreaking and inhumane and exactly the reason why we need something like Disability Pride Month in the first place. Because for some reason that I can't quite put my finger on, ableism, the whole idea of celebrating differences throws people for a loop. Like, why would you be proud of a disability? As if being disabled is the worst thing that you can possibly be and some sort of moral failing. But it also shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the meaning of pride, especially in this context. When most people think of the word pride, they imagine boastful arrogance, conceit, and feelings of superiority. And yes, pride, like any emotion, can venture into toxic excessiveness, but it also embodies the self-esteem, self-efficacy, and deep satisfaction of achievement. Pride is about visibility and resistance and the inherent value of every human being. And in the case of Disability Pride Month, it also means celebrating and discussing a piece of legislation that was passed into law 35 years ago. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, better known as the ADA. So let's talk about disability pride, the ADA, and how we're still fighting for equity in a world that was never built with us in mind, as our representatives clearly showed us today. The ADA was signed into law by President George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990, and amended by President George W. Bush in 2008, expanding the Supreme Court's narrow interpretation of disability. But this wasn't a gift from the government or politicians. The ADA is the result of years of protests, sit-ins, arrests, hunger strikes, and one very iconic moment that I am embarrassed to say I only learned about earlier this year, the Capitol crawl. On March 12th, 1990, more than 1,000 people calling for Congress to pass the ADA marched from the White House to the U.S. Capitol, and once there, approximately 60 disabled people cast aside their mobility aids and literally crawled up the steps of the U.S. Capitol to demand access, visibility, and basic civil and human rights. They crawled. They literally crawled because that's what the system expects of us. That's what the system becomes when we silence vulnerable voices and minority experiences. It becomes a world where disabled people, including the youngest participant, 8-year-old Jennifer Keelan, must literally crawl along the ground on their hands and knees or sitting backwards and climbing painstakingly up each and every marble step towards the building that houses our government, of the people, by the people, for the people, my ass. They crawled because it was the only way to finally be seen and heard in a system built to silence differences. They crawled, and they made sure that the entire world watched. So when the ADA finally passed 4 months later, it wasn't a gift. Codifying inherent and inalienable human rights is literally the bare minimum, but it was a start and a clear message that we matter, we're worthy, and we're not going anywhere. At its core, the ADA is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities and protects equal access in 5 main areas of life. The first is employment. It protects equal access to employment opportunities and reasonable accommodations in the workplace. Number 2 is state and local government services, which ensures equal access to public services like education, voting, healthcare, and so on. Number 3 is public transit, which ensures equal access to public transportation services such as the subway or trains. Number 4 is businesses open to the public, which ensures equal access to goods and services such as restaurants, bars, and even doctors' offices. It also includes commercial facilities and privately owned transit such as taxi services. Number 5 is telecommunications, which requires phone services to allow callers with hearing and speech disabilities to communicate. Other important requirements of the ADA include prohibiting retaliation when someone asserts their ADA rights, awarding attorney's fees to the winning party in ADA lawsuits, empowering certain federal agencies to issue guidance on ADA law, and asserting the self-efficacy of disabled folks to accept or reject aids or accommodations as they see fit. Which sounds pretty great, right? But like all things that sound too good to be true, there's a catch. The ADA does not include provisions for proactive enforcement. It only applies after the fact when the disabled person sues. So if a business isn't accessible or workplaces refuse to hire or reasonably accommodate people with disabilities, or disabled people can't access public transit or healthcare or education or even the telephone, nothing happens unless the disabled person sues. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Disabled people who are fighting every day just to survive generally don't have huge stashes of cash just lying around to fight lengthy court battles. So here's the cold, hard truth. We're still crawling. We're still facing issues such as doctors who ignore and dismiss us, workplaces that treat us as liabilities, marriage inequality, inaccessible housing, and a government propagating the idea that disabled and chronically ill people are a dire threat to the American people and our way of life because we don't feed the military-industrial complex. And don't even get me started on medical ableism. The ADA doesn't reach into the exam room and protect us from misdiagnosis or gaslighting, and it sure as hell doesn't guarantee that anyone will actually listen or even care when we need help. I hope by now you can see and understand that disability pride doesn't mean loving being in pain or glorifying or romanticizing chronic illness or disability. It means feeling like I belong in this world, even when it doesn't make space for me. It means refusing to stay silent or be ashamed of my lived reality or experiences, especially the body that carries me through this life. And perhaps most importantly, it means getting to rewrite the story that the system created for me into one where I'm finally seen and heard. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and drop a heart in the comments to let me know that you made it this far. Or if it helps you cope and process, share your feelings about this disgusting bill and our cowardly and shameful representatives. And please remember, especially after today, this is your story and you're in control of the narrative. Take care, friends.
So high, I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.